Okay, what we want to talk about now is other potential CMAHC roles. So some other services that the conference or and the board can provide. Conference of Food Protection generally sticks to updating the model food code. There's a lot of other national groups that handle other aspects of the food safety, but for aquatics, we're thinking that's not the case, and we think that the CMAHC can fill a void in a number of those other areas. We may not be able to do it right away, though. It requires a maturation of the organization, looking for like maybe an endowment rather than dependence on support through sponsorships. That would be ideal if we had some sort of kind of like a permanent funding source there so that we don't have to worry about sponsorship, so we can engage and do more of what we need to do or want to do. That will allow us for some long-term strategic plan, forecasting and plan growth, but when we're looking at kind of month to month on sponsorships and funding to keep us going, it makes it a little bit more difficult for those longer range, bigger ticket items. And say this is long-term and we can't do everything overnight. We're starting with what we have. So our initial focus obviously is to getting the successful launch of this biennial conference starting next year, 2015, to keep the MAC updated. So some other services, what we see is some expertise. We can provide assistance for requests about MAC adoption and interpretation, particularly interpretation. We hear a lot of questions or comments. As hard as we tried, the technical committees putting the language together, and as you probably know, we have the annexes supporting the parallel document that provides the why behind the what. What's the thought process? What's the details? It's not. There's still work to go into some of that stuff, so there's still going to need some interpretation. So we see that as a role of the CMAHC. There's guidance materials that need to be developed, installations, risk management, training. This MAC-specific vetting of training programs, we've already been approached on a couple different fronts. So the MAC has some requirements for pool operator training. We've got some requirements for lifeguards, for aquatic supervisors, and then the code lists all the criteria for the courses, for the instructors, and all that. But so you're a course provider, you go to a local jurisdiction, who makes the determination that your program is acceptable? There's been a request, and we're looking at that right now, as it seems like it would be an appropriate CMAHC function where we would review courses for compliance with the stated MAC specifications, and then CMAHC would provide and then publish a list of courses, whether it be operator training, lifeguards, aquatic supervisors. These courses have been evaluated and have been deemed acceptable as meeting MAC criteria. That's something we're starting to work on right now. It seems like that would be, from what we've heard, would fulfill a needed hole to be filled. And that also would hopefully take some burden off the health departments too. So the choice would be, okay, if we're going, the CMAHC lists this, we've got these courses, come on, how do we just accept anybody, or do we have to undertake the review ourselves? So you could have a multitude of different jurisdictions with different review processes and maybe different outcomes. So I think this would lead to some, certainly some consistency and eliminate a lot of demands and resources on local programs, and some continuity and consistency with training programs. Known kind of one-stop shop. You go and you've got national recognition approval, and so you're not having to deal with every local jurisdiction. Pool program guidance, data collection guidance. Also, Michael, we're talking about inspection reports, inspection data, but part of it is you need a data collection, a repository for, say, drownings or pool inspection data, but if you have these multitude of different collection tools and they're not consistent, it limits your ability to make any use or sense of that data. So we can provide some resources and references on data collection guidance. MAC promotion, again, other potential services, identifying what potential barriers are for adoption and helping to reduce those barriers. And one of the things, service, providing bound copies of the MAC. We, as you all know, it's on the web, it's free, downloadable, but there's some folks that may want a printed bound version. Is that something we should be entertaining and printing out a certain number of bound versions of the MAC? Other services, Influencing discussions on basic aquatic health and safety issues. You know, could we have a speakers bureau where you have some organizations and you want a speaker, presentations at key meetings, so we can have some standardized or some key speakers and key messages that can go out. Those are some other opportunities. Booths at key trade shows. You've got the Aquatics National Environmental Health Association. Should we have booths out there at some of these? Those are potential, again, other potential services that CMAC could provide. And research. We're looking at CMAC as possibly being the keeper of the MAC research agenda. As you've seen, I think Michael's going to speak about this in a couple minutes, but as we've been going through, and those of you on the technical committees, we said that we want all the code to be data-driven, science-based, but the fact is that there just isn't data and science for all aspects of it. We've been trying to keep track, and we've kept a running list of those items that, okay, right now this current version is best available practices on certain things, but we've identified that additional research is needed. So we maintain that list, and then we're going to be looking at having that out as a research agenda for folks to undertake that research, so we can now elevate best practices up to this is supported by data science research. And we want to team up with the aquatics groups to fund priority research projects. And this, ideally, CMAC would like to be involved in that too, but right now our funding is just getting us up and running, the ability to hold the conference and keep the code updated. But long term, if we had sustainable funding too, that's something we could see as, you know, helping. We've got key research items and help support the research. I do want to turn this over briefly to Michael to discuss the research agenda items.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm sorry. I know everybody's sick of hearing from me. So research, I've got to do my own arm waving in that so I can feel it after lunch. The research agenda is critical to driving this forward. Clearly, as part of the development, we saw that there were key elements that just needed to be addressed. I see Richard smiling. I know he's got one. And so I think it's really important that what we did was pull all this information out. And I know everybody thought that was a homework email that I sent out. It was an abbreviated version. So we have a 9-page version of the research agenda for those you detail people that would like to look. The plan here is that somebody's got to be the keeper of this. And we think the CMAC is in an ideal position to drive that and partner with other organizations as we move that agenda forward, and thinking about if we can do things like start to prioritize, which is don't leave without ranking in the back. What we can essentially do is then, if we have a list that we agree on, you fund off the top or fund out of it, depending on where the money's coming from, but you do it as a consortia. This is not, I think one of the issues that we've run into is aquatics, I think as a result of it being kind of at the state and local level with no federal jurisdiction, what it means is there's no federal pot of I was going to say of pie. That is, there's no pot of money that somebody has to put into this, as drinking water industry and other industries have that have kind of federal regulation. So the regulatory authority has money to do that. We're going to have to develop that, because I can tell you it's not the CDC budget for recreational water isn't going to drive it. And so I think we're going to have to think as a consortia how we do it and be very selective and very efficient in the way we do it, so that we can basically fund things off the top of this list that will make substantive change in the MAC. And so if we get certain data, we can say section 5623 can now be changed to do this. The data supports that. And I think that makes sense overall to move in that direction. And so the first steps that we're looking at here over last weekend, thank you, Doug, was to at least start to condense this, because the board on Friday said, Michael, you cannot send a 9-page document out. You're crazy. Who was it said I was crazy? I forget. One of the folks on the phone. But I agree. It was too much. I'm an information person, so I like people to have access to information. So you know, you have this that was sent out. It's a 2-pager at least to see, you know, that we're grouping under categories: illness, injury, drowning, design, pH, chlorine dioxide. Here's some key elements. We've picked 16 things. Give us. I see somebody back there writing their numbers on that, so we can try and rank things. I think one of the committees that you saw in here was the research committee. What we need to do is really, first of all, gather whatever new ideas there are and add to it, but we need a group to go through that's kind of got a little bit of a scientific bent to it and think about how do you transform kind of this gamish of stuff into something that makes sense from a funding standpoint, that if you're going to do a request for proposals, you need very focused requests. And so we need it to be condensed, written in a way that it says there are actually 5 projects under this that will address this question, and we will, fund 1 through 3 this year, 4 through 5 next year. And so that's the direction that we're going to be moving. And so take a look at that document, send us information. And I think as I wandered around, during the day here, I hope what you're getting is we really are trying to hear what you have to say. There have been some great suggestions, so we've got a lot of things to change, which is great. We didn't really have them set in stone. And so the same thing with the research. Send us your ideas of what's missing, rank things. We'll move forward with this and try and make sure that key items are addressed and taken care of. And so I wasn't going to go into great detail talking about, what specific projects you can look in the back, and we sent something around, both a kind of a detailed description and a kind of a fillable form sheet. We would like all of these forms we sent out back by December 17th. Doesn't mean we won't accept them, but after that, but we're basically trying to collate all of this and build this in. And so think about this from a committee standpoint as far as helping us pull this together so that we can move forward with it. Because I do think that part of keeping something updated is not just about talk, it's about data and new data, because these were gaps that we could see while we were doing the development, and so we're going to need to move that. But we need to kind of coalesce this and bring this to terms so that we can think about how we move forward. Thank you. Oh, there's a question from the live stream audience.
Live stream audience wanted to know if we've worked with academics for the research, and how might this national research agenda focus our work with the academics?
And I think, especially with NSBF funding and that, you've seen that already with Chip Blatchley's work and other folks' work. I think we have to do this. It means all of us are going to have to pool some resources to do it, though. This is not cheap. I think as we put on the slide here, what we've got to be careful about, I think, is that we're not NIH. We're not going to be funding 15-year long-term research. Somebody needs to do it, but I'm not sure this is the group to do the long-term basic sorts of things. We need applied research that's going to make direct impact on how we operate, how we design, and so on. And we will try and promote that with other folks. The problem for the academics is academics have to have a trough to feed at. And so from an NIH, NSF standpoint, it's tough. And so how do we work with other groups, and how do we think about kind of combining thinking with drinking water people, food people, and that sort of thing to get some of the similar sorts of data? I'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow, but we're going to have to team up on doing some of those longer term vision sorts of things, because I don't know that we have the deep pockets to do all of that.
Thank you, Michael. Now that we've talked about how to structure the CMAC for the 2015 conference and beyond, how we're going to run it. Now some details on actually planning for the 2015 conference. I'd like you to block your calendars right now. The first CMAC biennial conference is going to be next year in Scottsdale, Arizona, similar to this or the same as this. It's going to be associated before the World Aquatic Health Conference meeting, so October 6th and 7th. Here's the details of where that next year's conference is going to be held. Some of the conference timelines, again, this is subject to change based on your input and feedback during today's presentation, but if we're looking at the timeline on change requests, February, if we're going to look at next year, October meeting, so February 3rd, 8 months in advance, we need to solicit change request forms. April 7th, the 6-month time frame, change request forms are due, and then June 2nd, gives us 4 months in advance, change request review committee reviews and assigns to the appropriate councils. September 1 month, you've got the council's complete review. They decide on disposition, whether they're going to accept it, postpone it, or for more work, or reject it. and then they set the conference agenda and release it to members. So what's this mean? Obviously, we need to move rapidly on getting the structure discussed in place. So all the items that we talked about today, go through that, refine it, revise as appropriate based on your feedback. And then we need to recruit volunteers to participate in all these roles and committees and councils that we've identified. So we need people to sign up on volunteer sheets in the back. And Lena, this is the pink and the yellow forms, right? The pink. So we hope that you would complete those forms. We'll also be asking membership lists to do the same because we've got the compilation of members. And if you folks, we're going to be asking if you can ask to solicit beyond this meeting and membership, your colleagues and your folks that you know in the industry, make them aware of what's going on and get participation. The broader reach we have in the industry, the more voices, I think the better the product's going to be. It's going to be more reflective and representative and able to identify all the different aspects throughout the aquatics community and have folks involved and engaged in it. So on those fillable forms, we sent out fillable forms, electronic forms. You'll see that you need contact information, your affiliation, what expertise. I think there's some comments and discussion about, you know, we may have a variety of councils. If there's you may not have the expertise matched up, so you may have decision makers and that really don't have the background and expertise. So that's what we need to have, the expertise, so we can have a proper matchup of background expertise and what jobs need to be done. Your interest in CMAC, your potential time commitment. A lot of you folks that are here today, you're here because you're very involved in key people in the industry, but because you're very key people in the industry, you have very little time to dedicate to some. So we need you to think it through too, and that you have the time to dedicate to the project and process. Any ability to attend meetings in person, which is probably needed for council work. Chairs, vice chairs can use this information from those data forms then to assess expertise, speak with volunteers, and then select members there. So that's going to be what you fill out on those forms. It's going to be your kind of your bio on the chairs selecting you on what committee you may be on. So it's important to get that filled out. So our final points to be made. This isn't final for the day, but this segment, from what you've heard, are there any burning questions, thoughts, new ideas, or points to be made, or missing issues that we haven't talked about? Again, thinking about, it's all about structuring, creating or refining the structure to actually run the CMAC, the conference next year and on. So if we covered all the items, covered them adequately, or things that we've missed, how do we use live streaming or other technology to enable a larger audience to participate in the biennial conference? Obviously, it's a lot easier and a lot better in a lot of ways to be here in person, but because of limits and budget, especially with environmental health folks and industry folks with their busy schedules, can you dedicate the time, but you may be able to live stream or participate. We really need to think that through so we can maximize the participation from as broad a group as we can. And we're going to want to know, especially for those folks that are listening in on the live streaming end of them, if you could send some feedback to Jason and Colleen that are monitoring the site of how did this work for you folks today? Any insights and thoughts and suggestions from you folks on the other end of the live streaming, that would be helpful. So I'll open up the floor to hear your comments, concerns, thoughts at this point.
Steve Dunn, Commercial Pool Systems. I understand the comments about the timeline of when things are due and people working on them and so forth, and that going through the prime season of swimming, and that makes it difficult to provide time and having a conference in the fall. There was an offer on the table to hold it with the NEHA, which is more in the spring or early spring. I think that's a great offer. Mid-July, excuse me. Mid-July, so it backs up the time frame as to when people work on these items. My concern about the CMAHC conference is that that's where all the health officials go. You're not going to find industry, at least associating ourselves with this particular conference, the NSPF, World Aquatic Health Conference. You get a mix of industry and health officials. And so, personal opinion, I think that's the best way to go.
Thanks, Steve.
Sheet going to be distributed to the folks online and the other members of the conference that aren't here?
I think it's already been posted online, hasn't it?
Okay, just want to make sure. Yes, so it is available online as we speak to fill out the community volunteer info sheets.
Thanks.
And it was sent out in the email to everyone as well.
Your
It's a
work
fillable
assignment
form.
email, Michael?
Pardon?
That work assignment email that you sent out?
Yes. Mike 3. Yes, it was sent out via email, and we're getting some, as well as we're getting a bunch of thank yous for live streaming this, so the audience is wanting us to continue. I'll say we've actually been pretty busy this afternoon over here fielding questions through live streaming, and many of them have kind of mirrored what you all were saying in the room, and we tried to interject when it was a novel comment, but we're finding that this is to be pretty successful.
So speaking of use of technology, and I'm not sure how much you guys are using social media to promote this, but I just tweeted something on my own personal Twitter site, and I just got a response from a random person asking me to get the contact information for Don from New Mexico. So anyway, Don, I'll have to come up and talk to you and give that person your contact information, but again, social media, I think, is probably a useful way to get this information out there.
And thank you. That is something that's being undertaken as we speak, of Twitter account, I guess, right? To
Yes, we did Twitter Friday evening. We did a Mac chat last
And
Friday.
so, for those of you who know Doug intimately, you know he's not a real techie social media kind of guy. And so, anyways, we will be setting up a Twitter account for him, and we will help him and assist him on this in his entry into the social media world. And so, power to you, guy. 140 characters.
So the email that said was sent out. So I didn't. The last one I got was September 16th. So did anybody else not get the one that he's talking about this last couple of days? Yeah.
This is what he was talking about this morning. He said if you need to register on CMAHC.org, and
I registered a long time ago on CMAHC.org.
he said he had some bounce backs on his emails.
So, yeah, sorry, we had a few bounce backs, and so if you did not get an email from me, I think you didn't type your email address incorrectly. The few I knew I could send on because I could see there was something missing, but if you didn't get one, please email us again at info@cdc.org. Long day. info@cmac.org, and give us your email address. We'll see that the correct one there. Lena just wanted to say on the, which form? On the online form for sign up in that, I think it has a submit button that wasn't really meant to work, but people are trying to send it and it's not going to work. So send it to info@cmac.org so that we can get that. Don't try and submit it. It's not going to work that way.
This is Pete Caligari again. I'm sure this is something the NSPF has decided to do, but are they planning on having a online training course for this whole process for the MAC? And are they going to provide it to their instructors? Because we're the people that get out there and talk to people about this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sure maybe Michelle or
yeah, the comment or the comment was, is NSPF going to be providing online training? And Scott can probably speak to that, but I also want to speak to, there are other groups within the industry that are also developing e-learning products too. And that brings up, we've been discussing the logistics of that too on, if you're doing, again, we haven't totally vetted this yet, so Michael can jump in, but thought is, if you're doing some training and it's going to be, here's your CMAC training, I think there should be collaboration with the CMAC group or CMAC board to make sure that we're all on the same page and we've got some collaboration. But having said that, I don't know how many programs are going to be out there and whether we're just going to be able to handle all that. But Scott, do you want to speak to the NSPF specific?
Sure. As far as the foundation providing a training program in conjunction with CPO or something like that, that's being discussed at the time, and there hasn't been a commitment, but it's being evaluated.
Yeah, and this is Jason Kuntz here from CDC. We're also making a commitment to training for the inspectors as well, not in terms of something like NSPF would do, but recognizing that there is a need to identify at least parameters for what would be model training for an inspector or an aquatics program, then fully then allowing those other groups out there that do training for a living to develop their own training. And you can think about it in much like what we've done with the lifeguarding training and the operator training. If you go back through the code, it just indicates what the actual parameters are. I think you'll start to see some of that form around the operational guidelines that are coming out.
Other questions, comments? Before we move on to the last and final segment.
Don't leave us yet. 20 minutes. We can make it.
Guess I went through. Okay, so some housekeeping items too. Michael mentioned in the beginning about your CEU credits. Don't forget to get your CEU credits. Get your comments and priorities on the research agenda, the papers in the back of the room that we've been talking about throughout the day. Live stream, you can send your info to info@cmac.org by October 17th, we're shooting for. Any comments or ideas that you have that we didn't discuss today? You didn't have a chance to bring them up, write them on the paper and leave them in the back of the room. Against live stream folks, send to info@cmac.org. If we need more discussion, which usually after we wind down, there's folks that sometimes more comfortable, need more time to come up. We've arranged to have the board to regroup outside this meeting room to continue the discussion. We've got to vacate this room because there's another meeting that starts at 2:30. The Weidler room, I believe we're going to be reconvening in, which is right next door. So and we're going to be here for the duration, Michael and I and the rest of the board, to answer your questions or to talk. Did you have a? Okay, Lena, the papers, you want them outside or do you?
Yeah, but you can either give it to us or there's an envelope outside.
Okay. Okay, some of the action items that are coming out of this assignments here is we need to collate the discussion, integrate the applicable information into the straw man, because as we said, that was not cast in stone. A lot of good discussion, a lot of good comments. We're going to revise, retool that based on the comments. Develop and post the working structure information on the CMAC website, so all this is going to be up there on the site. We're going to create the documents and the guidance for initiating the change request processes, submission forms, committee guidance, et cetera. We've got to get all those tools up. As you saw from the timeline, we've got to start, I think, getting the word out February for next October's meeting. So we've got to digest what we have here, modify, and get that out for you folks and the rest of the aquatics community to start using and engaging in the process. We need to appoint chairs, vice chairs, and start selecting volunteers. But again, once we make whatever necessary changes based on the feedback on what the makeup and the constituency of the councils, that'll be happening. Engage members to start thinking about and writing change requests. We know that there's number of items, our public comments that we just said they're going to need more input, need some more working through it. So we've already identified some, and we've posted that with a public comment. So there's probably some items right up top that need to be evaluated and get ready to get into the change request items. And some things as you go through there just maybe that jump right out that need to be changed. So as you work through the MAC and become more familiar with it, those things identified and get them on the forms and get them in there. We're going to expand and create a coherent research agenda. We've got the topics, and with your input and your ranking the research items, we'll be able to refine that and get it more in proper terminology on what a research proposal, and working with, I know NSPF, as a lot of you folks know, I've been given grants for a number of years for aquatics research, and I guess I don't want to speak totally on behalf of NSPF, but I know that they've been anxiously awaiting the results of your committee, this group's work on what the key research items are, because they're poised to use their grant dollars, research dollars, to support the priority research items, to the extent practical. So we're ready, just waiting to get these things finalized, and then NSPF and any other organizations that want to fund research hopefully can use this to then move forward on getting appropriate researchers and research lined up and moving forward on this, and then we can, with some changes in the MAC to come out of it as the research directs. So what's the future look like for CMAHC and where we're going? We look at the CMAHC can also provide assistance to state and local jurisdictions and industry on MAC uses, benefits, and implementation. Encourage everyone to become a member. This is key. Become a member of the CMAHC to drive future revisions of the MAC. It's all collectively. Everybody that's in the aquatics here, it's vested interest. We need, what did we say, 300,000 pools, Francine, was that out around ballpark of the commercial type pools in the country? Why wouldn't we expect at least one person from each of those 300,000 pools to become a member of CMAHC? It's in their interest. It's going to impact, as it's adopted, it's going to impact. And if there's no nominal membership cost, but it's an avenue, a way to be heard, to understand, and make sure that the code is responsive and reflective as possible, why wouldn't you want to be a member? So I think it would be a good recruiting, I'm thinking, for you to reach out, and folks that aren't aware of it, involved with it, make them aware of it. It's all of our collective codes, you folks that are building them, operating them, regulating them, the more folks and the more diverse groups that are involved in it, the better off we're going to be. So today, I think, I'm not sure what the updated numbers are, but we were, before, as we came into the meeting today, we had 129 in-person folks in this room, supposedly, and 163 live stream registrants. And we know a lot of the live stream. I don't know if you got any feedback, Jason or Colleen, on the other end, but you have a live stream site, but there might be multiple, in likelihood, multiple folks sitting in on the end of that one live stream. So we could have today hopefully reached several hundred folks through this process. We want to encourage everyone to volunteer for the CMAHC roles to make this whole process successful. So it's not like, well, they said this is what we're going to do. No, it's we collectively. We're all engaged. We're all partners of it. It's all our collective product, and we have to be engaged to make it work and be as reflective of, the needs as possible. For those that are looking at adopting, you can contact CMAHC or CDC if you have some questions about the MAC or MAC adoption. And know that we wish that all stakeholders working together, we can preserve and protect America's greatest pastime, because it is. I mean, we're looking at health and safety benefits of it, and now with the more sedentary lifestyle in the country and the more and more research that shows the benefits of aquatics and just immersed in water, we don't want them collapsing, and because of cost or illness concerns or drowning concerns, to contract. We want to expand because of the health and safety and just pleasure of being engaged and involved in aquatics. And I think we're all collectively a big part of promoting that and making sure that aquatics are out there, available, and safe for everybody to enjoy. So we want some special thanks for meeting assistants, Susan Wickman and Jocelyn Jester for NSPF. Thanks so much to you folks for helping us make this happen and doing the legwork and putting this together at the conference, and Lena Curtis from CDC for helping us here, the Board of Directors from CMAC, and all the MAC participants for helping get us the first edition. All you folks that engaged in the review, were in technical committees, steering committees, and the public comments, the 4,000 some odd public comments. So just really thank you folks, and the attendees and the live streaming folks for showing the interest in participating, and all the new CMAC members that we hope will be signing up as a result of this meeting. So another special thanks to our founding sponsor, the National Swimming Pool Foundation, Tom Chocki and the Board of Directors for their support of the CMAC, and Susan and Jocelyn for, again, their meeting support. And special thanks again to our industry partners, Jeff Ellison Associates, Whitewater and West Industries, and World Water Park for the beverage and lunch sponsors. It is so much appreciated for you guys to step up to the plate and help us make this happen. So again, hats off to you folks.
Hey, Doug, if you don't mind me saying, the board has really tried to bend over backwards to thank our sponsors, because without them, we really couldn't have had today. And I joked a little earlier this morning about inviting you to come see me, but in a serious point of view, if any of you would like to be a part of helping fund this effort and supporting this effort, I will be up front, and let's just introduce ourselves to each other, and maybe we can start a dialogue to develop a win-win relationship for both us and the industry. So thank you very much.
And we're also got some really good feedback. They want to thank our live streaming group over there. They said that the live streaming event was flawless today, and they could hear it, they could see it very well. So thank you so much.
Okay. A note on the sponsorships, a little follow-up to what Scott was saying. The sponsorship levels are outlined in the MAC website at our cmac.org sponsorship. All the aquatics groups will be impacted by the MAC potentially, and so all have an interest in seeing the MAC be successful. So making it what it should be, making sure it's responsive and reflective of what it needs to be is important. And then making the commitment to aquatic health and safety by investing in the CMAC. And it also makes a bold statement about your organizational individual leadership. And again, I think that's demonstrated in our refreshment. I mean, the industry, the World Water Park, Ellis, Francine's company there, just on that big step, just stepping, don't know how this meeting's going to come about, but took that step and helped us out to make it happen, and I think we really appreciate it and look forward to, hopefully, the rest of you, others will look at some opportunities to help move this, our collective organization forward. And more information, here's the websites for CMAC and for Healthy Swimming MAC. Michael, did you have any closing?
Again, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming. We're really happy to be at the end of this. I think we got a lot of feedback to kind of craft this and mold this into something more vital than incorporating your input. I just ask as you get up, we're going to move over to Weedler if people have questions, but stand up, talk to one of your neighbors, and just let them know how you're going to help move the MAC forward. And what concrete action are you going to take to help move this forward and help this be successful? Because I think it's going to take each and every one of us to do that. And I think we have to just start committing ourselves to doing it. So thanks very much for being here.